Your moment to shine. Okay, good evening and welcome to the Saratoga Springs Planning Commission meeting. It's February 13th, 2020. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance led by David Johnson, Economic Development Director here at the city.
All right, the audience has already risen. Okay, please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David. Let's go ahead and do a roll call. We'll start down here and go ahead and proceed with that. And then Director Stroud, if you would just introduce staff, that would be great afterwards.
Josh Wagstaff.
Reed Rhyme.
Troy Cunningham.
Brian Chapman.
Ken Kilgore.
Bryce Anderson.
Audrey Barton.
Dave Stroud with Gina Grand Prix, Rachel Day, Gordon Miner. Sarah Cara will be here. Dave Johnson. Forgot your name.
Conrad Hafen.
He's our new city attorney, one of our assistant city attorney. So, and then Nicola Fike.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Chapman, sorry, this
Yes.
is random. There's no requirement to do staff roll call.
Oh, we know.
Okay, just want to make sure you're aware.
Weekly, we are told that, yet we still do it. We'll go to item number 3. This is public input time. It's time set aside for the public, if there are any in attendance, to express their ideas, concerns, comments, questions, etc. If you do have a public comment, if you'd come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and then keep your comments fairly brief, that would be appreciated. Is there anybody from the public? Please, sir.
My name is Richard Ferguson.
Sir, you can either have a seat there or go to the podium, either one.
And I'm a resident of Fox Hollow. I got the notification in the mail. And to my knowledge, none of my neighbors did, but I'm just curious to find out what is going on, what the proposal is, what they're trying to develop.
Is this concerning the rezone and general plan amendment?
Right.
Yeah, this is concerning the postcard I got in the mail. Notice
Okay.
of public hearing.
We are going to be addressing the Fox Hollow item in just a couple of items. And so you can either say your comments now and we can capture them, or when we open that item, you're welcome to come back up. Either way is good with us.
It's going to be discussed when?
In item number 5. So in just a few short minutes, I'm sure we'll get to it and then we can.
Okay.
Okay. Any other input from the public on things I should have said not further on the agenda? Okay, we will close public input and move on to item number 4. This is a business item, a site plan for Pony Express Dental located at 2253 South Redwood Road. Vincent Design Groups is the applicant, and we will turn it over to staff for the presentation.
So this is for a dental office, more in the south part of the town. We have applicant Ivy Turno and her husband, Michael Turno, here with us.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And, starting over there is the materials board as well. You can all look at that. So this is just for a site plan down at South Talons Cove Drive near the golf course. Here is the area. It's in the regional commercial zone with residential around and some more commercial as well. We have the site plan itself with the parking and the structure that contains the dental office and then 3 additional units, my bad, on the south end. Landscaping plan, meeting code with all of it. Their elevations, as is shown on that board as well, with the materials and percentages. Lighting, meeting our code, and then our motions regarding the site plan. So it's so that we have a Southern Dental office, pretty much.
Okay. Does the applicant want to add to any of the presentation?
No, we're excited to be in Saratoga Springs. We've opened up dental offices in Eagle Mountain as well as Daybreak, and it's all under the Pony Express name, and we're looking forward to being in Saratoga Springs.
Fantastic. Since we didn't capture it, could you give us your name and address for the record? Your names and address?
Ivy Torno and Michael Torno, and we live at 11302 North Normandy Way, Highland, Utah.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission. Commissioner Kilgore.
So this is, since this is an administrative process for us, just really make sure that everything's in compliance with the code and such. So I'd just like to always ask the applicants if you agree to comply with findings and conditions in the city staff and engineering and fire chief's reports.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. And then I have a question to the city, or to the staff. On condition 3, as part of the motions, is this a condition for the applicant?
Yes, because the way that the parking was set up, the
Yeah.
dental office requires 5 units per 1,000 square feet. And with how much parking is provided, the other tenants could have only uses that require 4 stalls per 1,000 square feet. There's not enough if they were to have 5 or need 5 or more.
Okay, so,
So they do comply with the parking standards.
right.
It's just in order to keep in compliance, those other tenants can only have a use that requires no more than 4 stalls per 1,000 square feet.
Okay. Okay, so it does, so it would impact or possibly limit then future tenants and what kind of tenants can be in there, right?
Well,
Based on-
retail, most of ours don't go above 4.
Okay.
So it's pretty safe, and retail would be able to go in.
Okay, all right. And then, because the packet is so big, I can't get to, it's page 35 in the big packet. I don't know what page it is with the, there's a
It's about.
page, so it's page 35 in the big packet, but I can't seem to get to it. Just a question about,
If you give your question, I can get to the page.
yeah, it's just park strip maintenance. I think it shows the parking and such. I wonder who's doing the park strip maintenance? Will it be like the HOA or in that area, or is it the tenants, or who does the
We're
park strip
the
maintenance?
owners, so
So
we'll, yeah.
you guys will be doing that then? Oh, okay, all right.
The city will be doing along Redwood due to the trail.
Right.
But then after the trail and then on the south part.
Okay, all right. Oh, I finally got the, okay, and then, that's it for me. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Commissioner Ryan.
I just had coming in new and my own level of education around some of these. One of the recommendations from the staff in section C was a level 1 traffic impact study. Just wonder if I could have a little bit of a background as to what that entails.
I don't have the outline for a level 1 traffic impact study. It's a standard that UDOT has, so I don't have that outline off the top of my head.
Okay, appreciate that. That caught my attention on, I think it's a good thing just because of the nature of having the golf course right there. When they have tournaments pretty much every day and that parking lot gets full, and where this building is going to be is where people are parking, and I'm sure they'll take advantage of those stalls if there's the opportunity to do so, I would say so. Those golfers are always risky folks, so.
So could I add to that? Where that's coming from is city standards ordinance requires at least a trip generation memo, and they produced that. The trip generation memo indicated, and there's a threshold in the standard that says if it exceeds 100 trips per day, then they have to do a full-blown study. Well, a full-blown study for something like this is the least of those, which would be a level 1. So they'll submit that, and whatever impacts there are, then we'll have discussions with them about mitigating them.
Perfect, thank you.
To add to that really quick too, that was one of the engineer's conditions of approval. And it's already been changed in the packet that we have, but the last condition mentioned something about going to the city council, and that was just typed in correctly. It doesn't, it ends with planning commission here. So I just want to make sure that's clear, the last condition of the engineer's staff report. And they just need the traffic impact study, and it's good.
Anything else from the commission? Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the proposed site plan of Pony Express Dental at 2253 South Talons Cove Drive in the regional commercial zone with the findings and conditions stated in the staff packet.
Second it.
Motion by Kilgore. We'll give the second to Barton. Any discussion to that motion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any in opposition? Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, welcome to the city.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to item number 5. This is a public hearing for the rezone and general plan amendment for Fox Hollow neighborhoods 4 and 13, and master development agreement amendment for neighborhoods 4, 12, and 13. Chad Bessinger from SCP Fox Hollow is the applicant, and we'll turn it over to Sarah Carroll from the city for a presentation.
Okay. The circles on these two maps are the areas impacted by this request. So you can see on the zoning map that we have regional commercial in the corners of the circled area towards Redwood Road. Right now, there are actually detention basins in those corners, so it's not possible to put commercial there because those are regional basins. They're pretty large. It's not possible to move them. And so one thing the applicant is proposing is that that commercial be moved in between those two bubbles, so adjacent to Redwood Road, and also that it be split in half. So what you're seeing there is 20 acres of commercial, and so then they're requesting that the 10 acres remain near Redwood Road and that 10 acres be moved west up by the future Foothill Boulevard Freeway. And then even though it shows regional commercial on the zoning map, the master development agreement limits that to 5 acres of regional commercial and 15 acres of neighborhood commercial. And since the original master development agreement, the city has created a new zone called community commercial, which is intended to be adjacent to commercial and have a mixture of what's allowed in regional commercial and neighborhood commercial. So it wouldn't allow the big box, but it would allow a gas station. And staff recommended that the applicant proceed with that zone, and they reviewed that and liked the community commercial zone, and that's what they're requesting for both of the locations. So you can see Exhibit D1 will be the main exhibit that's being amended. It's the land use exhibit in the master development agreement, and the proposed Exhibit D1 indicates in orange the areas that are proposed for community commercial zoning. And what that does to neighborhood 4, so neighborhood 4 is the larger bubble, that's the one closest to Redwood Road, and that is already approved for 335 units, and most of that would be small lot, single family, and some of that can be townhomes. You'll see a concept plan in the next exhibit. Actually, I forgot to include it, sorry. You'll see it in your packet though. So the concept plan shows a variety of small lots. One comment I got from the HOA is they would like to see any of the small lot type product to have full-length driveways. They have a development in Fox Hollow called Neighborhood 2 that just has aprons, so a short approach that's 5 to 7 feet leading to the garage. And the challenge they're having is that the two-story homes, the garages are built at the minimum, and the owners have a difficult time fitting 2 vehicles in there. And so their recommendation from the HOA was that any smaller lots also be required to have the full 20-foot driveway. And I don't know if, I just got that feedback yesterday, so the applicant hasn't heard that. I don't know if their proposed lots factored in full-length driveways or not. And Anyhow, the proposed Exhibit D1 also shows the proposed Foothill Boulevard Freeway width, and it takes into account, and then the proposed amendment takes into account the units that were in that location. So the orange color on proposed Exhibit D1 next to Foothill Boulevard Freeway would be community commercial, and that was previously designated for 6 units to the acre. So that would be a reduction of 125 units, and then it would be replaced with community commercial. And then another change would be to, just to the north of that orange color is neighborhood 12, and that is proposed to maintain the same amount of units. However, the land mass gets slightly smaller because of the road alignment. And then the other properties that you're seeing are not owned by the applicant, so you'll see other properties with the freeway alignment covering those properties, but they are not owned by the applicant, so there's no proposed modifications for those at this time. And here's a summary of the proposed density. So in neighborhood 4, the density would decrease, but the number of units would stay the same. And the reason the density would decrease is because the residential area would increase if 10 acres is moved to 10 acres of commercial is moved to another location. And then in neighborhood 12, they are proposing the same number of units as I mentioned, but over less acreage due to the Foothill Boulevard Freeway. And so the density goes up slightly, but it goes up from 3.5 to 3.86. And then neighborhood 13 is approved for 125 units, but that's all proposed to be commercial, so there wouldn't be any units there. Overall, the density within the master development agreement would decrease. And then staff recommends approval based on the findings and conditions in the staff report. This is the Planning Commission is required to make a recommendation to the City Council on the rezone and land use map amendments. And then the concept plan requires informal feedback. And so we do have some informal feedback listed at the, right under the proposed recommendation. And that, so in a PUD, they can ask for variations to lot size and things like that. And that can be formally requested with the preliminary plat application. And the Fox Hollow agreement allows them to request those. And then their concept plan does have 2 units too many, so we ask that they reduce the concept plan to comply with the 335. And then also, one comment that I have mentioned to them is that we need to, oh, sorry, it's on here, it just doesn't have, it's the second line, it just doesn't have a bubble. So public and private roads shall be identified and shall comply with city standards and specifications. The city has standards for private roads as well as public roads, and that's to be sure that they have sidewalks, and so we ask that they comply with those adopted standards. And I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission.
Okay, is the applicant here? Please, if you would come and join us at the table. If you would give us your name and addresses for the record, that would be great.
My name is Brock Loomis, address 1148 West Legacy Crossing Boulevard in Centerville, Utah.
Mitch Vance, same address.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the presentation?
No, Sarah did a great job. If we can answer any questions, we'd be happy to.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so if there's anybody from the public here who would like to give comments or concerns, questions for this issue, please come to the podium. Sir, this would be your time.
Well,
If you have a comment, if you would come to the podium so we can get it on the record.
we're still on 5.
We are on number 5. This is Fox Hollow, correct?
You know, I have to apologize. I'm a little hard of hearing, and there's a really bad echo in here. And I'm sorry to say I didn't understand. I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
It appears to me that they want to bring in a lot of more commercial units and increase the density. making it higher density neighborhood, more traffic, more people, more congestion. That's what I got out of it, but.
Sarah, perhaps you could visit with this resident?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you have to do it now, but if you would like to, the density is, from what we've been proposed, is a decrease in density,
Decrease.
a decrease in density.
Ah,
And so we apologize for the echo in the sound system is something that's a work in progress.
okay.
So it is a decrease in density, and we'll try and talk loud and even boost up the volume.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public? Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing and open it up to the Planning Commission. Commissioner Kilgore.
I actually didn't have any comments until the presentation. And it's really a question of this planning staff. So looks like one of the requests that was made from one of the HOAs is that the small lots have full-length driveways. Is that something that should go into a condition? Or maybe not, because this is a rezone request, and the condition should go into the concept
No,
plan later?
being a rezone is a legislative decision, and so that could be a condition of that rezone.
We could go ahead and put that in there.
It's been shown that what they've been done in the past with the aprons, excuse me, the aprons that you talked about, is causing parking problems.
Okay. So it could be appropriate to put it into
Yes.
this rezone request? Okay.
Yes.
All right, then, and should it be a condition then? Is that the appropriate way to address this issue?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I think that's it for me.
Anybody?
I was going to ask the applicant, what do you think about that before we do that?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it before. I didn't know it was an issue. It's something we'd be willing to look at. To give an answer right now would be difficult to say
Okay, then maybe.
what impact it would have.
Yeah.
Most of those lots are 100 feet deep or close to that. On those smaller lots, they do get a little more shallow, and so it does become a little bit more of a challenge to make sure we can fit what we can in there.
Okay.
But it is something we'd be, just hearing about it tonight like you, we'd be willing to look at it and see what impact it would have.
Okay, so maybe if we were to include it as a condition, we add it as something that you look at rather than making it a condition of approval or something like that, right? Okay. All right.
So this is a little uncustomary, but I want to have Sarah's attention as well because she's the staff, and we also don't have residents come out too often. And so let's take a 5-minute break if we can, and then Sarah, if you can talk to the resident, and then maybe after that we can ask you some questions as well. I don't want to split you, and so let's take a 5-minute break. What's that? Okay, we're going to reconvene. Appreciate your patience with us in that. We want to make sure every resident's concerns are heard, just like we appreciate the applicants and their concerns. So we appreciate that. And Sarah, thanks for doing that. We were at discussion with the commission. If there's any other discussion, if you'd buzz in. And it looks like maybe that, oh, Sarah, did you have anything? I saw that it just buzzed in. Was that just, no?
Oh,
Okay.
that was just
We're
in
good.
case. I thought you might have a question.
Oh,
Did I miss a question
Nope.
earlier?
Nope.
Okay.
well, actually, yes. We'll just restate. There was, Commissioner Kilgore had a question about the driveways and whether that should be a condition. The applicant indicated that that was new to them.
Well, for concept plan, we want to give them informal feedback, and then we can address it in the future, but it's good for them to hear that feedback now.
Okay. And this is a recommendation to the city council, so there's plenty of time to address it. Commissioner Cunningham.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. I believe this came to us before, a few years ago, before the Mountain View alignment was totally in place, and I was in favor of the move then, and I'm still in favor of the move now. So I just want to make the rest of the commission aware of that. And then I also want to say that I would be in favor of at least adjusting the driveways if we can, because I live in well, my neighborhood doesn't have shorter driveways, but Harvest Hills next to it does, and it does become an issue when you have to take a kid to school or something, because those roads can be pretty congested with people who can't fit their car in their driveway. So, and that's all the comments I have.
So we've heard the driveway concern a couple of times. Somebody who has mentioned that might want to think of what that condition would read like if you were going to make a motion, or if there's a motion in the affirmative. Any other comments from the commission? Okay, we will entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the proposed rezones and general plan amendments for Fox Hollow neighborhoods 4, 12, and 13 as described in Section C of this report, and as depicted in the attached exhibits with the findings and conditions below, with the added condition to review the driveways on the smaller lots, homes. Is that
Sarah, is that specific enough?
Yes, it is.
Okay. We have a motion by Cunningham.
Second?
Second by Kilgore. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6. This is also a public hearing for a major amendment for Jordan Promenade, the Wander Village Plan 1, located approximately Riverside Drive and 400 South. Oakwood Homes is the applicant. We'll turn it over to Director Stroud.
Yes, if you look on the screen there, the entire area in blue, that's the entire community plan. What you'd see below Pony Express then would be the Village Plan 1. And so right now, the entire community plan is 367 acres with a total of 3 villages, and anywhere between 1,500 and 1,900 units could be built there. There's that range that's approved in the community plan. Village Plan 1 is approximately 135 acres. There are 599 units currently approved in the VP. The applicant is proposing 664, and we'll get to the reason why here in a minute. The CP is assigned anywhere between 600 and 730 units within Village Plan 1. So what they're proposing, what they have is still well within the range. So you see on the map here, if you see the 2 areas in red, a couple of these requests deal with those 2 areas. The top one, right now, the area that you see clouded in red is currently in the Village Plan right now is slated for commercial. The applicant would like to reduce that commercial, put in some smaller units there. They do have a builder that is ready to go on that corner commercial piece, and then the developer is anticipating, due to the nature of being a busy intersection, that commercial would just then go to the north, which in the current community plan, there is no commercial on the north side of Pony at this time. So in a sense, it's going to be relocated. Then the lower cloud you see there right now in the community plan and village plan, that is a site for a chapel. At this time, the LDS Church has said they don't need one at that location. And so obviously, if that's not needed, that would then come out and be replaced by some single-family lots. And so then the clouds there at the bottom is language that gives staff approval to reduce the commercial acreage there or eliminate it, and then eliminate the church site in favor of residential. And that's where the extra units then do come from. And again, the proposed unit count is still well within the range that's approved in the community plan. And then and the other change deals with that user that wants to go on that corner. They would like to add, what's in that red cloud is not entirely, a lot of that's still there. It's just convenience store without fast food would be added to the list of permitted uses. Refueling stations private would be removed, but refueling station public would then go in its place. And that is, of course, like I said, for that corner user that's ready to go there. So that amounts to the changes that you see there for Village Plan 1. Staff recommends approval with the findings and conditions. And of course, you have the option to continue or to send a recommendation of denial.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Is the applicant here? Please, sir, if you'd come to the table and introduce yourself for the record.
My name's Sid Alsop. I'm with Oakwood Homes.
I'm sorry, could you say your name?
Sid Alsop.
Sid. Thank you, Sid.
And the address is 206 East Winchester Street, Murray, Utah, 84107.
Thank you, welcome. Is there anything you'd like to add to the presentation?
No, not at this point.
Okay, this is a public hearing. We will open it as such. Is there anybody here from the public who'd like to comment on item number 6? Now would be the time. If you would like to introduce yourself.
We're Pam and Neil Infanger.
Oh, a duo.
She needs support.
Fair enough.
We live at 310 Pavilion Circle. And actually, our comments are more regarding not so much the Jordan Promenade necessarily, or Wonder Village. I think that's where you are right now. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. We have some questions for you folks, and it really concerns anything that might impact the Saratoga Road, which it looks to me, I could not see this slide. Yes, it does. Yeah, it is on 400 South. Am I correct?
Yeah, Saratoga Road and 400 South.
Yes. Our concern kind of is about the road structure around it, and a stoplight at 400 and Redwood. And I know that when, this will date us a little bit, when Mia was the mayor, actually was going to be the mayor, we went to her about this very concern of all of the development that could possibly take place in this area and then along Saratoga Road, and talked to her about our road structures, and especially along the lake there on Saratoga Road. And we were told that the substructure, that the road could not be improved on Saratoga Drive because of the water table. She told us how far it was underneath and so forth and so on, and said that that would not be a condition for building tons and tons of homes. And now we have tons and tons of homes. And so what we're bringing up is really more in concern about our road situation, what the impact, if that is really true, if that water table is that low, or that high, I'm sorry. And we also talked at that time with the other planning commissions, we've talked twice about this, about that there is no light at all on 400 South and Redwood Road. And it is almost impossible at night. There is no street light that shines there to even say 400 North. Is my time up?
Please finish.
Oh, okay, so go ahead. I'll give you 3 minutes,
Please,
right?
please
Okay,
finish.
so just
You're
to
fine.
finish up what she was concerned about, there has been concern with a lot of the residents that there needs to be a stoplight at the corner of 400 South and Redwood Road for safety reasons. A stoplight is one thing. One thing would go a long ways towards rectifying, would just have a street light so you can actually see the road sign and know that you're coming up on 400 South so that you can turn. Right now, it's
Dark.
blank, it's dark. You can't see. You're on top of it before you realize that, oh, this is 400 South. So that is one of the issues that we had. A stoplight for safety reasons, obviously, people are trying to turn, particularly if they're trying to turn to the south, is a nightmare and a safety hazard. Fortunately, I never have to go that way, but I have seen people do some very risky behavior trying to get into the traffic lane on Redwood Road from there. And it's just a matter of time before we have something serious happen. The other issue that Pam alluded to, the sub-base, the road base underneath Saratoga Road, has been deteriorating for years, but we keep adding more and more and more traffic to it. And so our question is there a plan to fix that sub-base so that we don't put new pavement and have a nice 4-lane road there someday, and then within 5 years, it's completely shot again because the water table is only 6 feet deep. I know the city had an experience recently with trying to reroute the sewer system there. 3-week project turned into a 4-month project because of that very issue, the water table. We want to raise that concern that, excuse me, that we could very easily come into the same situation and it'd be an ongoing thing. So when the plans are made for fixing Redwood Road, fixing Saratoga Road, it needs to be taken seriously. That it's there's a bigger problem there than just putting new pavement down.
And just one last comment, even though we probably exceeded our 6 minutes, is that, oh my, it came and it went just like that.
It does.
Well, if it comes back, maybe I'll get another 3 minutes later, but that's kind of...
So anyway, those are the concerns that we wanted to raise, and we thank you for giving us the opportunity because
to raise them on your subject.
No problem.
because your development obviously impacts the traffic.
It does.
You know, we've got, and so it's a time to raise that concern.
We appreciate you doing so. Thank you.
Your name and address again?
Yes.
It's Neil and Pam. The last name is Infanger. And we're at 310 Pavilion Circle in the original HOA. Everybody knows her.
No, me. See, he was looking at you, I think.
310 Pavilion Circle. Say what?
Saratoga Springs.
That didn't pull my map, that's why I'm not going to
Do you know how long we've been there? Only 15 years. We're one of the olders. Is that all we
Thank you.
needed?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public before we close the public hearing? Okay, we will close public hearing and try and answer some of those questions. There were, and Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was questions about a street light or a stoplight at 400 in Redwood, and also concerns about the structure of the road and the base of Saratoga Road and the water table and that. So I will have both of you be green, and you can take it as you'd like.
Commissioner, I'd be happy to answer those questions. First of all, with the traffic signal, comment about the traffic signal, UDOT has determined, they've done a warrant study there and determined that a traffic signal is warranted and it's under design, so.
Did you guys catch that?
Yes.
Yes.
Timetable or anything?
I don't know, that's a UDOT project. The comment about there not being a light there at that intersection, I'll let the Public Works Department know about that. And then the comment about the structural strength of the pavement on Saratoga Road, that's duly noted, and we'll take that into account as we work with that road in the future.
Okay. Was there any additions or additional comment from you, David? Or are you good? Okay, hopefully that answers some of your questions, concerns. Looks like there's a light at some point.
Question, who would you send it to at UDOT to find out what the timetable is on that? An individual or a phone number about that stoplight?
Let me give you my card, and you can follow up with me, and I'll let you know.
Thank you, Gordon. Okay, we'll turn it over to the commission. Commissioner Kilgore. It's a rowdy bunch up here tonight.
Sorry, everything's shut down. Nope. Okay. Excuse me. On page 28 of the what is this? The Promenade Village Plan. Sorry. On page 28, there's a red comment there. It says adding convenience store, non-fast food, and deleting refueling station. I think Director Stroud mentioned this. And then private, refueling station private, and adding refueling station public. Okay, so I guess, I think my question was, is this what we are deciding on, that whether we should agree to it, or is that already in the code and so we don't really have to?
No, they're asking to delete the fuel station private, add fuel station public, and add a convenience store, but no fast food, no food in the.
Okay, so that is
You know
something
how some
we're
convenience
deciding on.
stores have a Arby's or a Subway or something. That's not their plan. It'd just be a straight convenience store with fuel.
Okay, so if we recommend approval, then that would, what they're requesting would go?
Yes.
Would be okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Well, if the council approves it, yes.
Yeah, so, if we.
Yep.
Okay, so that's our recommendation, okay. And then, I was wondering, do any of the house offerings in this village plan fit in with the moderate housing range, whatever the state considers
Affordable
moderate
housing?
housing? What's that?
Affordable housing?
Oh, moderate
I'm
income
sorry,
housing?
Affordable housing.
That'd be up to the applicant to answer that.
Okay. Yeah, so cities, are getting a lot of pressure from the state and residents, from state to provide affordable housing. And so just wondering, what are your plans as far as that goes? Are that a certain range of homes that you're offering, would it fit in the affordable housing?
So by
range?
affordable housing, are you talking about tax credit applicable homes where you'd be able to draw upon the city, state, or whoever to get the tax credit to afford the homes? Or is it something more of affordable for the people who's making a medium income?
Yeah, it's more, that's the latter. Yeah.
We've got 5, 6 product types that are in the community that range from duets all the way up to a larger 3,000-4,000 square foot home with the basement. And our goal is to keep those duets and what we're calling our carriage homes within that medium income to make them affordable to that buyer.
Okay.
We're continually working and trying to tweak our process to make sure that we can hit everyone within the buying spectrum.
And is it affordable, do you feel that it will be affordable because of the size of it, or is it the amenities around it, or is it the landscape, the size of the lot? Is that how it's decided?
Generally, it's going to come down to density.
Density.
And as we get more density, we can allocate, you can have more units at a lower cost basis. And as we start to amenitize it more and more, then it becomes more and more expensive. But what we've designed within our village plans and our community plan is amenities for the whole community. And so not only can the people that are getting the smaller units, I shouldn't say smaller units, but the smaller lot units, they can partake of the amenities that are within their pods, but additionally for the community-wide amenities.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then let's see. Sorry, it takes a while for, oh, here we go. On page 48 of the village plan, you have the fence, vinyl fences. So you've got various colors for the vinyl fencing that, as examples in the pictures. I was just wondering, are they representative of the actual proposed colors? Because if they are, they're very nice. But I was just wondering, or is that just, just a picture, and it's actually going to be some other different color?
Off the top of my head, I know of two colors, and what we're gonna be doing is a gray color and then a white color. I don't know, it's up to the designer who's allocating what colors will go where. That's not my forte.
Okay.
Making things pretty.
Well, because the pictures that you have are really nice. It's really rare to see these open fences that are black and vinyl as opposed
Yeah,
to the white.
those split
It's
rail
kind of nice.
vinyl fences are something that we're gonna be putting on open spaces that, for example, we've got some hot springs and units that back up to that. That's what we'll be putting up there. And we've got some community linear trails, and we'll have the split rail fence like that.
Okay. I was wondering, so Hot Springs Park, I understand, will be city maintained. It's a city maintained public park, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So will there be designated parking? Because it looks like it butts right up against the neighborhood park there that is it's for the community. It looks like any parking would be for the community, and I was just wondering if people from the city were to come in, where would they park?
Yeah, so negotiations that we've had with the city we'll be putting a bridge across the hot
Saw that,
spring.
yeah.
So parking would actually be at the city regional park, and then people could access it from that side, and should they want to cross over onto our units or our side, they can do that as well.
Okay.
But that's where the parking will come from.
Okay. And I believe that bridge will be built in phase 2. That's also when the Hot Springs Park would build? Was it phase 2, I think?
I don't know what phase 2, if you're talking about Village 2 or Village 3, it's undetermined right now. What we're trying to do is accelerate the construction of our amenities like the Hot Spring Park. As far as a timeline or an actual date of when that's going through, I can't give you an honest date right now.
Okay, I thought, you had the Village 1, and then there's going to be one section that was built first, and then the other section will be built later.
Yeah.
And I thought that park and the bridge was later, so.
Yeah, as we put in our amenity center that's going to go right there, there's it'll be like a pool and then just some bathrooms and things like that.
Okay.
We will probably put it in at that same time, just so all of the amenity is open for everybody. And then as we get all of the sprinkler heads and everything that Public Works is gonna need installed, and once that's completed, we could turn it over to the city. But we wouldn't be turning it over to the city until everything's installed according to city spec and the city agrees that it's what
Right.
they're looking for.
What's the timeline you project for that Hot Springs Park?
We should be finishing up the landscape in the Hot Springs Park when it gets warmer weather. Right now, throwing down sod and trees is
Oh, that's soon.
little difficult.
Not like 3
Yeah.
years out, it's more like
Yeah,
1 year out.
We've got that, most of the hot spring area all graded off right now. We're just gonna be taking down the remainder of it, and then once it warms up, we'll start redoing, or I shouldn't say redoing, but start finishing that up.
Okay. And then there's a little triangle on that map that you had of the whole area. There's a little triangle to the northwest corner, that little tiny triangle under the legend. And I was wondering that's not in the overall landscape plan, and I was just wondering, is that going to be grass, or what is that going to be? That little bitty triangle
Right.
to the right, top right corner.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right there. It wasn't in your landscape plan, so I was wondering what you're planning to do with that.
so right now, the SLR is retaining most of that area over there for commercial.
What is that?
SLR will be retaining that area for commercial.
That little bitty triangle, or?
It goes all the way over. That little bitty triangle is actually part of a larger parcel that's
Oh, it
over
is?
there.
Yeah,
SLR parcel.
I just think that's a mistake on the map. That's not part of their community plan, correct?
Yeah, because, okay, well, it might be a mistake.
That little triangle off to the
Yeah, because it
right.
does show up here, but, okay, that could be,
Yeah, one thing you need to.
even dotted, it's got the dotted line all around it.
Yeah, one thing to explain part of this too is that Oakwood is taking down property from SLR in phases. So what you see on the village plan may not all be owned by Oakwood at this time, but they'll buy it from SLR as they need it. And that piece over there is in that situation. It's still owned by SLR.
Okay. Page, so 176. I think this is the last comment I have. So on page 89, there's a note 3 at the bottom of the page. It says, the clear view triangle will adhere to standards of American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. I was wondering if the city's clear sight triangle code adheres to that as well. If not, which code should prevail? I would think it's the city code that would prevail, but just wondering what you would think. Or who?
Am I turning on?
The engineer.
Turn it on. There we go. Okay, where is that reference? Is he reading that reference in the community plan, or the village plan?
It's in the village plan. It's note 3 at the bottom of that page, page 89. It's actually about the monuments, but it says here that monument locations adhere to the clear view triangle standards established by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, but usually we say that it should adhere to the code, the city code. And so I'm wondering if, which should prevail there? Is it this third-party one or the city one?
Well, what you're reading now is already approved in the village plan. So anything beyond what are on the slides here, those things are already approved in the village plan. You can surely ask questions about it if you have a question of clarification, but what you're bringing up, these other items are not under any considerations tonight, nor is that a recommendation of anything to go to the city council.
Okay.
So that standard is already approved by the
Okay.
council to go by whatever that standard is.
Okay, so then I won't question what's in here. Then I'll now ask with our city code then, does that also comply with this? Otherwise, we'll have two different standards in the city for clear sight triangle.
Yeah, and Gordon would have to answer I'm not sure what that standard is.
The current city standard is, it doesn't consider all scenarios. So the current city standard is good for the scenario that it was designed for. AASHTO covers all of those scenarios. So perfectly comfortable with AASHTO, perfectly comfortable with the city standard under the scenario that it was designed for.
Okay. So
Those
in the
scenarios
future-
being, I don't want to be cagey here. The scenarios are
Right.
whether you're approaching an intersection from a stopped condition or a through condition. And the city standard is for a through condition, going through an intersection without stopping.
Right.
And most all of the site triangle issues we run into are ones from a stopped condition. And those site triangles are shallower. And those are acceptable because the person comes to a stop and then they proceed slowly into the intersection until they make a decision, and then they go.
Okay. Okay, so in the future, when a developer then comes and says that's what they'll follow, then we should be okay with that without having to reference this?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
we're, the engineering and planning are in discussions to revisit the standard that's, the city standard right now.
Okay, all right. And I think that's it for me. Thanks. Thank you.
Commissioner Wagstaff.
I just wanted to double check clarification. So there's 4 meeting houses on the master plan. We're just looking at the one that's highlighted here in red, the one meeting house, right?
Correct.
Tonight? Okay.
Yeah, if there's other meeting house locations as shown in the community plan, when the village plans come in, the village plans could eliminate those as well. The council could say, because the community plan itself is like a really broad general plan, if you want to call it that. It's a bubble diagram is what it is. And so the more specifics of the village plan, they could come in and they could eliminate that from the start on that village plan.
Okay. And then the neighborhood commercial, we're just looking at it still on the south side, but reducing it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Hey, Dave, when we did Beacon Point, you remember the special project site was counted as open space, and then we went back and forth on that. Does the same happen with meeting houses? Does a meeting house count as open space, and when they eliminate that, does that affect the open space?
Not in this plan, no.
Okay, that's my question.
Any other? Commissioner Barton.
Just a question from kind of for everybody about 400 South. Has that been discussed often in meetings or anything like that? Because I think that's a huge issue as well. I agree with that. With Patriot Park right there, there's tons of traffic already. And then with this, I think that's a big concern. So I'm just wondering if it's been brought up before in city council in these meetings, anything like that. I don't know.
You're talking about the signal, the traffic
400
signal?
South in general, like it really is dark there. It really is. When I go to Patriot Park and stuff like that, you really can miss it if you're not watching. And so already with Patriot Park there and with all this other stuff coming in, has it been something that's been talked about before now?
Well, so the signal, absolutely, it's warranted, they're designing it. As far as the light at the intersection, Sarah and I got on Google Street View here, and there is a light at that intersection. Whether it's as bright as some would want it to be, I guess, is a different discussion.
I'm going to have to go look for it because it seems very dark right there to me when I go over that way. Oh, okay.
It's probably 50, 60 yards from the corner.
Okay.
So that's not what I'm seeing on Street View. On Street View, it shows the light at the point of curvature on Redwood Road before you curve into 400 South. Now, as 400 South develops, as they develop those lots along 400 South, they'll be required to put in streetlights. So as it develops, it will be improved. And I assume there are streetlights. I'm not remembering, I wasn't part of the Patriot Park plans, but I assume they've put streetlights along the frontage of Patriot Park already. And Sarah's saying yes. So as this
Yeah, the park's
street,
well lit.
as this street frontage develops, those lights will be installed.
Great, thank you.
Sorry.
Back to Commissioner Anderson.
So Pony Express Parkway, when it continues through, and it shows that as Phase 2, I think that alleviates things on 400 South. But the timing on Phase 2 is what, ballpark-wise?
For us, we're working on Phase 2 as far as planning goes. As I understand that the city is working right now to get a design, at least go to contract with the design.
You mean Pony Express?
For Pony Express, yeah.
So it'd probably be on the front end of Phase 2.
It'd be on the front end of Phase 2, and I know that someone's working on contracting that right now.
Great.
So I can speak to that also. In fact, just a couple days ago, the Public Works Department was conducting a pre-proposal meeting with potential engineers to design that. So that's going to be under design here very quickly. That's for Pony Express I'm talking about.
Right.
Now, that will be just a couple lanes of Pony Express, not the entire street width.
Any follow-up, Commissioner Anderson?
Nope.
Let's go back to Commissioner Wagstaff.
Just really quick on that light on the corner, unless it's been added recently, there's the bike trail on the north side of 4 South, and coming off that bike trail into that intersection, there's not a light. And so I know at least last year when I was running on that trail, there's no light coming into 4th South.
So I was speaking of on the south side of the
Yes,
intersection.
there is one on the south side, you're correct.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Okay, so the way I'm understanding what we're doing here is we're removing the meeting house, but then what we're doing is we're also wanting to amend the plan to, for in the future, when we have other meeting houses that may or may not need to go in one of the plans, we're going to give staff the authority to do that, correct?
Potentially. This is just written into Village Plan 1.
Okay.
And I would assume the language would probably be mirrored when Village Plans 2 and 3 come in as well.
So-
Because obviously, even now, the way this language is written, it just gives staff the approval. I mean, the church could come to them next week and say, well, we need one now. Then they'd go through that process and they'd decide, well, do we want to do it? We could put it back. This gives a flexibility to keep it open, whether they want to come back with it or not.
So we're only modifying for this village plan? We're not
Correct.
doing the entire
Correct.
MDA? Okay. Because I was going to say, if we're doing this for the entire MDA, the number 3 option, change configuration size of commercial parcel or total removal.
No, these are all VP1 amendments.
Okay. Then I'm a little bit more okay, because I was going to, option 3, I'm like, no. I didn't want to just blanket give that for the whole development agreement. I'm okay with changing to allow the convenience store and the refueling station. I'm good with that. I would like to really see more commercial. When we originally did this, that was one of the things we asked for, is more commercial, so I really don't like seeing it vanishing, but it is what it is.
Personally, I think you'll still see it just be moved to the north side. That's going to be a major intersection, which commercial, and right now the community plan doesn't show it on the north side.
Okay.
But I think when they come in for that village plan, it just makes perfect sense that you're going to have commercial in that opposite corner.
All right, that's all I have, thanks.
Commissioner Ryan.
That's just, I think I just heard from Director Stroud what I wanted to hear, but there's nothing really necessarily that is binding into that future area north of the.
Correct.
Of the section at this point, so we're kind of giving it up without any, it's almost like given that it most likely will happen, but it's not guaranteed, I guess,
Correct.
what we're giving up. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I will not regurgitate my questions, but appreciate the feedback from staff and engineering and the applicant. So thank you. We will entertain a motion. Commissioner Anderson.
I move to forward a recommendation of approval regarding the Jordan Promenade Village Plan 1 amendments with the findings and conditions as found in the staff report.
Motion by Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Ryan. Discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quickly moving on to item number 7. This is a public hearing on the updates to the standard technical specifications and drawings manual for the city of Saratoga Springs. Exciting stuff. We will turn it over to the city. Is this you, Gordon?
Yes.
Turn over to Mr. Minor from the city for a presentation and discussion.
Great. Okay, as indicated in the staff report, our transportation master plan was based off of UDOT's regional and Mountain Land Association of Governments, what was called the Trans Plan 40, which the planning horizon of that was 2040. And in that plan, the projected volumes for Saratoga Road were collector level volumes. So that's the way our transportation master plan was when North Shore came through for their neighborhood plan. And they were entitled based on Saratoga Road being a collector. Now, within the last year, Mountain Land Association of Governments and UDOT updated their regional transportation plan and moved the planning horizon to 2050. And they're showing on their plan now that Saratoga Road is an arterial level facility, which requires 2 more lanes. And so we were kind of behind the 8 ball at that point because properties on both sides were entitled. And to incorporate our arterial typical section would have impacted the North Shore development dramatically. And so we came up with the standard that you see here to still convey the traffic that we need for that functional classification of an arterial and with minimal impact. And so that's why you have that here today, as we're going to bring other revisions to the standard technical specifications and drawings here pretty soon. But being as we have North Shore literally under design right now, we're trying to be as reactive as possible. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
This is a public hearing, and so we will open it up before the planning commission gets to you. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to item number 7 on the updates to the standard technical specifications and drawings manual? Please, sir.
Again, Neil Enfanger. We're talking about where the North Shore is. They're putting a park across on the lakeside, across Saratoga Road from North Shore now. Isn't that in the plan? Is there a plan for a new marina and park and all that kind of stuff on just across Saratoga Road from?
Yes.
Okay.
Long term, right?
Okay. Yeah. I guess just a question as to what is an arterial road going to look like? I know it's probably in design right now. We don't know maybe what it will look like.
David,
but,
do you have, sorry to interrupt you, sir. Do you have the packet where you can bring up the cross-section?
Yeah, take me a little bit here, but I can get to it.
And by the way, this typical section, this cross-section of road would be from the future Pony Express, or what is 145 South now, up to Pioneer Crossing. It would not proceed farther south into the area this gentleman's talking about. Access to that facility is still yet to be determined, how we're going to access that.
So it's not that part of Saratoga Road that does the wide corner going around the D.R. Horton property that they're building out right now?
No, it's from 145 northward.
Yeah, so, Pony Express will continue. So right now, Pony Express stops here, it will continue, and it will, so this part is Saratoga Road.
Okay, it isn't gonna change.
So then, this is the section we're talking about right here.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Okay.
I like that.
And so I apologize, I failed to mention that in my presentation, that this segment of road is for Pony Express, or what is today 145 North, up to Pioneer Crossing only.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to provide input? Okay, we will close public hearing and turn it over to the commission. Commissioner Anderson?
So that would run right along Saratoga Road, across in front of Loch Lomond neighborhood, and then elbow up to, or turn north to Pioneer.
The typical section you see here today is from the intersection of 145 and Saratoga Road, northward only.
Oh, okay.
That goes in front of Loch Lomond, that will be our standard wider, arterial with the big median that we expect to have bus transit and eventually rail. So
Got it.
very different facility east-west, which is, Pony.
Just for clarity, David, could you bring that up on Google Maps? Or a map of your choice. Any map would probably do. Like MapQuest. I don't.
Where do you want to go specifically? Where at?
Well, just to make sure we're all on the same page of where Gordon was saying this was running, if you could just
145.
potentially have like a driving simulator that would take us there.
Nope.
Then you'll have to move it over so they can see it.
Yeah, we get the map up here.
Okay, we're in action, folks. So let's start off by showing us where Redwood is.
Redwood's across, right here.
I see a body of water that looks like the lake.
So here's Redwood,
Okay,
there, Riverside. So Pony's coming along up to Saratoga.
and so the
So this road will go from right there.
document in question goes from,
So from where his arrow is right now, up to Pioneer, that's the section that we're talking about.
is everyone clear on that? Is there any questions about that? We're good?
Yeah, it is 2300. Yeah, it's Lehigh's 2300 West.
Yeah, Lehigh's 2300 West. We like to say Saratoga Road because it's.
Okay, now that's why. That's why we're all confused for a minute there. If you had just said, the old 2300,
Actually, I've kind of pushed for Saratoga coordinates on that, and I keep getting told, no, that's Saratoga. Okay, so it's Saratoga Road.
We share it. Half theirs, half ours.
okay. Any other questions from the commission? Okay. We will entertain a motion.
I move to forward a positive recommendation to the city council to add the standard drawing to the city's standard technical specifications and drawings.
Second.
Motion by Kilgore, second by Cunningham. Discussion of the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? Okay, thank you, Gordon. Item number 8, this is a work session, Title 19 Code Amendments, Conditional Use Permits, City Initiated. Turn it over to Director Stroud.
Yeah, I wonder how we want to approach this. There's a lot of information here, but, as you read the memo, the council a couple weeks ago, they eliminated all conditional uses in the city. So basically anything that was a conditional use right now, technically you can't do. So there's kind of a hole for, if you want to do something, it comes into the city. We've had a few people come in, we said, you're not allowed in the city right now because you're not in the table. And so this is something that jumped to priority. We as staff, of course, you recall, we brought the tables to you in the past. We were looking at amending a lot of those conditional uses to go permitted, to also adding additional uses. And so tonight, we want to get your feedback on what we're proposing so far. You can see the tables, there's been some changes. Some went straight from, conditional to permitted. Some could be eliminated. I don't know the best way to go about this. Perhaps maybe just get feedback from each one of you individually instead of go through line by line with what we want to do. Because what we need to do is we'd like to bring this back in 2 weeks at a public hearing, because I think it's priority that we get this table back online, so to speak, for any applicants that come in. And so we want to push this to the next planning commission meeting. And so I guess we just want to get your feedback on what we're proposing to do. You can see here on the table, again, for instance, bed and breakfast, eliminated as conditional, made it permitted in certain zones. Where it was conditional in some zones, we just totally said no. I mean, for instance, why would we put a bed and breakfast in an R19 and R28? Probably doesn't make sense to do that. And so we can go through these slide by slide. We can maybe perhaps just take your feedback individually. Chair, what would you like to do?
In interest of keeping Gordon awake, maybe we'll just go with comments or questions that the commission has. But first, I'm going to let Mr. Johnson have his.
I was just going to add to maybe the way to go about it is to just simply identify if you have specific questions or specific recommended changes. So,
yeah, there are some
otherwise
uses.
We can discuss this for a really long time.
Yeah,
so.
there are some uses right now in the city that are permitted but have certain conditions. There are conditional uses here which we think probably should have a few conditions. Now, we don't want to take every use that was a conditional use now permitted but then make a litany of conditions for each one of those uses. There's some, for instance, like a hotel. We see the value in maybe having a separation from schools, from residential. Perhaps auto uses, separation, that sort of thing. Again, up to you, what kind of feedback you'd like to give back to us.
Okay, I will open up to the commission. Commissioner Kilgore.
Before if you, if I could take a second, if you recall, when they were speaking earlier, I said I know her.
Yeah, I just
I used to go to Cub Scouts in her house 40 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And look what he's become.
That's what I just wrote, look.
Yeah, yep, uh-huh. And so she lived a few blocks from me. I'd go to Cub Scouts at her house.
Oh
and
my gosh, that is
40 years ago,
terrible.
so.
Wow.
That's Minnesota.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Way to go. Good to see you, David.
That is crazy.
All roads lead to Saratoga Springs.
He got his citizenship in the community badge.
Wow, small
Anyway,
world.
back to what we were discussing.
How many years ago?
40. Yeah. All right.
Okay, Commissioner Kilgore.
Okay, I think I only have one question. So I'm just wondering, under this, are all home-based businesses now permitted without review?
Let's see, where's our chart here?
Because I remember in the past when we did review, there was always something about like street and traffic and things like that. And I thought it's something, or does maybe staff review it and so we don't need to do it at the planning
Yeah, the
commission?
home occupations just be permitted based on what we already have in the code right now. There are already standards for
Right.
those uses.
Okay. Oh,
And I'll have staff jump into.
Any
we-
staff
We
can
will
come and
work
join
on this
us.
together and.
Actually, that is something we would want feedback on because with certain home-based businesses, it would go to planning commission. And so we can maintain that, they're just permitted instead of conditional use permits. And so that's something that is, the planning commission still wants to see or not.
Such as which businesses would come to planning
If
commission?
you have like a
Class
day-
3.
Yeah, class 3 could be the total number of people that visit the home occupation.
Yeah.
Don't get a lot of them. I think in the 2.5 years I've been here, maybe been one, maybe
yeah,
two.
I think in the past, just based on our experience, there, probably not all of them, but maybe definitely class 3. I just do think that we should at least review that because it's a time, I mean, usually the applicants will say they talked to all the neighbors, they got neighbors' approval and everything, but still I think we should provide a forum where neighbors can at least come to the meeting and say, actually, we don't like it, something like that, especially because of the traffic. And then the other part is, there was one I remember where there was some, I don't know if it's a discrepancy, but we couldn't decide if the stairwell to the basement should be included as part of the floor, the total floor square footage, yeah. Because they had to use that stairwell. And if that's the case, then it has to be included, but they didn't include it. And so luckily it didn't matter at that time, but sometimes it would matter. And I think that's something that we should look at for safety's sake, because the fire, the fire chief likes that. So at least my recommendation is that, at least for some of those, we do include it, just because of in the past, we did have some good questions that we had to ask.
Yeah,
So-
just to clarify on a comment you made about neighbors, a conditional use permit is really a permitted use with conditions. That's the problem with why we're looking at limiting, so other cities have eliminated them too. It's very hard to deny a conditional use permit. State code even says, if there's somebody trying to mitigate some impact, that's great, but you don't have to totally eliminate that impact either. You just have to have some kind of plan to mitigate it, to reduce it. And so, again, it's very hard to say no to a conditional use permit. So if neighbors come out and say, oh, we don't like that, even then, whoever the land use authority is, it's hard for them, the land use authority to actually come back and say, well, your neighbors don't like it. No, you can't do it.
Okay. So maybe it's not a good forum for neighbors to come and complain. Although, I mean, we do open up hearing anyway, even though we're required to just follow the code in many cases. But I still like the idea that for maybe certain class, that class 3, that we do have a chance to review it, just because it's more people, it's a bigger business, a more intense use maybe, and that we could look at the floor plan, just to make sure that it fits the fire. So I know that the staff is capable
Again, we
of
don't
doing
have a
that,
lot of
but-
them come through.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
probably not a
exactly.
big issue.
Yeah, so that's my preference, personally. And then I was going to ask about, well, I think I crossed it out. So I think somewhere in the packet it mentioned it, but things like sexually oriented businesses, should that? I think it's only in the industrial warehouse zone, I think, or was it the industrial zone? I think that's the only places where it's permitted.
What use?
The sexually oriented business.
Yeah, an SOB, and we can severely limit where an SOB goes.
Okay,
And so,
and was that permitted, or is that also conditional? I know it's in there. I'm just lazy.
It's permitted right now in the code. It's not a conditional use right now. It is permitted. So there's no change to that.
Okay.
But it is the industrial, which currently we don't have any industrial zones.
Okay, so, okay. Yeah, just wondering if, I know there should be a place for it, but I'm just wondering if it should be conditional, but
It already
I guess
has a whole chapter of standards as well.
standards, okay, all right, then that's good. And then I think, oh yeah, you did have the tattoo parlors in there too, so, okay, that's it for me, thank you.
Yeah, we'd like to change that to shop. Parlor seems like an outdated
Yeah.
name.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
similar to ice cream parlor, it's just
Right.
a little outdated, so.
Like a sock shop or something. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cunningham.
I like what you've done. And we do have an industrial zone for the mine. We had to change that for them when we annexed them into the city.
Down on the south side?
No, on the west side by Eagle Mountain.
The next to the springs?
Yes,
That's Eagle Mountain.
yes, that mine there, they're part of, there's a, whatever their property is in Saratoga is an industrial zone. We had to do that. I remember. But this is just like, we're gonna have more coming, right? There's more uses gonna be coming later.
Well, and we've been talking about this as staff for a while now, but it didn't, it's a work in progress. But since the council did this, we just wanted to get the uses they changed back to permitted. We'll still come back to you where we will have more uses to add to this table. We just don't have the time now to go through and do those because this is a priority to get these back
Right.
online.
If I could just interject real quick, I should have said this to begin with. A work session, there's no motion. We're just here to give feedback, just to be clear. The city is desiring that of you.
I think Hayden would be happy that his tattoo parlor is now permitted other than in the industrial commercial zone.
Probably the big thing we're probably looking at is what uses do you see that are conditional, going to permitted, that you would like to see perhaps a few certain standards that go with, like, for instance, hotel separation from residential, separation from school. That's probably the primary feedback we'd like to see tonight.
And the hotel, I like what you've done with that, with the distance from the school, park, or playground. And then they need to have a crime mitigation plan. I think that's good.
And we're waiting on feedback from the police chief as well, whether some of these things he actually wants to see in part of the code, or if he's good with what our standard zoning requires right now.
Mr. Johnson.
I think you guys kind of said what my thought was, but just clarifying that this work session's intent is just to get feedback on what's being proposed, and we will bring back to you a draft for recommendation to go to the council next. So that's the intent of this. So whatever you see, and that's why I was saying, if you have specific questions or specific recommendations for change, the idea is that now that these conditional uses are no longer permitted, we need to put, if we're going to keep those conditional uses and make them permitted, we need to put in the code specific standards to be permitted, if that makes sense. So.
Since you're lit up, Mr. Johnson, can you?
I'm always lit up.
Since your microphone is turned on, I will restate. Is there anything in here, in exclusions to certain areas, that impacts your job with bringing businesses to the city?
I mean, there's some impacts, but I've sat very intimately in meetings with Planning Commission, had really thorough discussions about this and about some of those impacts. And I think we've come to some pretty good terms as far as what's reasonable. And so that's kind of now where we're at. We've had those thorough discussions as staff, and now we're just kind of looking for any additional insight on forming the standards within the policies. So.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cunningham, back to you.
Oh, I didn't have anything else, I just didn't turn off.
Okay, Commissioner Barton.
I think you answered most of my question, but I think another thing I was wondering is just, are you just following, were other cities talking about it? Were you, I mean, was it a concern that you guys started having? How did this?
When I got here, one of my big concerns was, well, not just when I got here and about a year ago, I brought in a couple developers. One that was super excited about the property. He hadn't done anything in Saratoga, and he looked at our use table, and he didn't even want to go look at sites. And we had a plan, a day to go spend and look at sites. I had looked at some of his sites, and he said, until you get all your conditional uses cleaned up, it's not even worth my time. And that's when, I don't know, I mean, we'd already kind of been talking about it, but that's when I really started pushing gung-ho, let's see what we can do. And so it's been, I don't know what, 4 or 5 month process. We've been going through that table. And then, obviously the city council decided to hold a special meeting to just eliminate them all altogether, which kind of expedited our efforts.
I like the
actually.
changes. I just was wondering, kind of how.
Yeah, that's kind of the background behind it. To Commissioner Chapman's point, because it was hindering, the table has been hindering my ability to attract businesses to come and garner economic
So
development.
now you have no excuses.
Well, so they say. I mean, my biggest excuse is still that I can't force anyone to do anything. So when people ask you, well, why don't you make Chili's come here? Why don't you make them? Give me the
Commissioner
connection and I'll see what I can do. So
Commissioner Anderson, do you have something clever to say back to that?
yeah, I'm sure there is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other comments?
I guess I was just, we're hitting on the same lines with what I was thinking. It's always hard to gaze into the crystal ball, which is, I think, what we're trying to do here, right? Because there's been things that have arisen, I would say, or there's impetus, right? And there's public outcry on certain things and your ability to do your job. And it's a tough thing to answer. I like the changes. I'd hate to see us have to just come back and do this all again or try to get, this wholesale change again. If we should miss something, that's always hard to go to the lowest common denominator, and I understand that. But I would appreciate, because you all are the experts as staff, how far do you think we've come in this first phase, and do you feel comfortable? I would appreciate that kind of feedback to make sure that you all feel like we're headed down the right track.
I mean, I definitely feel like as a whole, I feel like we're on the right track. To be completely honest, some of the standards, well, let me back up. So some of the standards that were recommended, Rachel did an amazing job of researching a lot of those standards, as did planning staff as a whole, but getting other city comparisons, so it wasn't just out of the hat. Here's what we think. We really did a
There was
thorough.
precedent that you were looking towards, I guess? or-
What's that?
We just looked at what other cities were doing.
Right, yeah, exactly, in the standards. So, there's certain standards that Lehigh had or other cities had that we said, okay, for this type of business or that type of business, should we have distance requirements, or should we have lighting requirements, or things like that? Now, what I was gonna say is, to be honest, I think for some of the businesses that have been looking at the city, this might impact where they were maybe looking to go or wanting to go or had plans to go. So there will be some of that. But I'm trying to work with all these different entities to see if we can still make it work in that general area or make that certain property work. So we're trying to be reasonable, because we have competing priorities, trying to balance those. So, but I feel like holistically, it's fair what we're proposing, even though maybe there might be individual circumstances where it's going to make it a little more difficult. But I think in the end, we can make things work holistically with this, or we won't have to keep coming back, like you mentioned.
Ballparking those kind of entities that you just mentioned, 5 to 10, 10 plus, how many would you say that you're going to have to kind of finesse?
Well, there were a couple already with conditional use applications in, and we since have received, I don't know, 2 or 3 that have come in. So I don't know, like maybe a half a dozen so far that we've interacted with. Gina,
Yeah, so they're not necessarily conditional use permit applications, they're more rezones. You'll see one here in a couple weeks on Office Warehouse. So the thing is, we have these changes, we're proposing these changes, but there's always gonna be something that we will come up. So, the sky's not falling, there's corrections that we can make if it doesn't fit. Or, there's always gonna be those tweaks that you have to come back and make. But I think today's point is, I think we've done a good job in, finding
and talking about each one of these uses to make sure that that's the correct fit. I mean, I think there's still a couple that we need to talk about specifically, but to get your input so we know which direction to go with it. But other than that, I mean, you're not going to get everything on there. You'll have a table of 19,000 uses, and I don't think you want that in the city. And so it just makes it more difficult. And I think we've done a pretty good job in making those recommendations.
And I think that's part of why we're here before the planning commission, and then we'll go to the city council for their final approval, is because, you know, there were some things permitted or conditional use that as staff, we were perfectly fine with. But now that we've gotten rid of all the conditional uses, that puts the onus on us to make recommendations for standards. And so we're trying to make fair standards based on comparisons of other cities that we've looked at, but we're looking for the planning commission to provide that feedback and ultimately for the city council to approve and make decision on those legislative changes. So they can take, and you as well can make recommendations to loosen the standards that we've proposed or to make them more stringent, but we feel like the ones that we're proposing are fair if planning feels like that's a fair assessment as well, so.
I had a quick question. Pawn shops are permitted in office warehouse and industrial. An office warehouse kind of struck me as a little bit odd. Is there a particular reason that office warehouse is a good spot for that?
Well, I remember discussing this. You figure a pawn shop, they have, the ones that I've been in, I go to them to find deals. They have a warehouse where they take people's pawn, they got to hold it for 30 days. So it's in a storage area.
Okay.
And so we thought there's a storefront in the front that can serve other businesses as well. And that a pawn shop would, probably that type of building setup would be perfect for a pawn shop.
And now you know how government employees actually supplement their income. Pawn shops, sorry, just kidding.
I can't knock a guy who goes to a pawn shop.
Thank you.
I think along those same lines, talking about office warehouse, we need to address one of the elephants in the room is storage units. I just got another call yesterday on somebody that wants to know where the best place to put storage units is here in the city. So we right now, it's only allowed in office warehouse. The application that you'll be seeing in a few weeks is a concept plan for storage units up by the storage units off of Redwood Road. They're where that annexation just took place.
So
right next to that.
Can I add to what you're saying? So I think what Gina's getting at is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, we've put forth some recommendations on those things, but if the planning commission wants to recommend that all storage units in the future are only indoor storage units, or have a percentage of indoor outdoor, or have wall requirements around them, things like that. That is one that comes up quite a bit. The other thing that we talked about with storage units is, and I can't remember what our final recommendation was. Do you remember?
Yeah, we didn't have a final recommendation.
Oh, we didn't?
We
Okay.
didn't, but we did want feedback regarding if you wanted distance requirements between them, or per population number that there can be, or aesthetics, or if it's all indoor or outdoor.
Right. So maybe, I mean, we've kind of chattered a little bit, but maybe we need to go back to if there are specific things that each planning commissioner has that we can get feedback on, but that was one of them. Do you have recommendations on, do we have a distant requirement or a per population requirement? Would you like staff to come up with that specific to storage units, and then along with anything else that we've proposed? Or
And just keep in mind, and along these same lines is, we live in a community where we have Camp Williams to the north. I think I've talked about this before with staff, but we've got Camp Williams to the north. We've got the Tech over in Lehigh. You've got a lot of transient housing. People come and go quite frequently because of their jobs, their employment, whatever life brings to them. And storage units are a necessity. Now, not saying that, I think along the lines Dave is saying is maybe we don't need as much, but we still need it as a community. It's one of those amenities or one of those types of businesses that is needed. I think Tippy and I were talking that in some townhomes, their garages, they use as storage units, and then the parking goes out as outside. Right, I mean, you think of your neighbors that do that and they park on their street. I mean, that's one thing you have to consider in making some of these recommendations is where do we put it? Do we put it right next to other storage units? Do we keep them in the same area or do we spread them out throughout the city? What is it that you would recommend on that?
So what mechanism could the city even have to put a quota on something like storage units? If it's a permitted use and the business, the landowner wants to do that, how can the city go back?
That's what we're saying is you can create standards in the code. You see that with like the check cities is some cities will say, hey, you can't have more than one check city within a mile radius of each other. So you don't get like a check city on every corner. You can do similar things with storage units. You can say, hey, we don't want to see a storage unit in every single office warehouse, or every single property that's zoned office warehouse. We don't want them to all be storage units. And so we don't want storage units more than, I'm just throwing out, a mile radius of each other or half-mile radius of each other. That's some of the intent of doing that. And you put that right in the code so that it's a standard and it's a legal way, I guess, of administering that.
And also remember where those zones are. We have very limited office warehousing.
Right.
And even our general plan doesn't show that much of it. So you have to take that into consideration too.
But I don't want to get stuck on office warehouse for too long because I think we have a lot, if you guys have specific questions or feedback on a variety of items.
I mean, it seems like we're kind of morphing a little bit because although it is a work session, looking at this table and then kind of, getting off into the weeds a little bit. But I've always struggled with this on the Planning Commission. In theory, I can understand the idea of limiting businesses in a certain radius, but then it comes to the arbitrary designation of what that radius is. And, is it a half mile? Is it 3/4 of a mile?
Well, that's what she was getting at. So there's a couple ways to do it. You look at what other cities have done, what's a precedence, and then you also, and that's what Gina was saying, you look at where your zones are and what's reasonable. And so as staff, that's our job, is to say, hey, do you want us to look at a radius, a per population, a mix of both, and then from there come with a recommendation based on how we see the spread of the zoning is.
To me, that sounds great.
Yeah,
But
it would still require a legal review, obviously. There has to be some sort of legal interpretation that you're separated due to the impact it may have on adjacent properties. It has to have some sort of basis to do that, and that would still require Kevin and the Attorney's Department to review that.
Well, at least my feedback would be to follow your suggestion and bring a recommendation after research. Is there any other feedback specific to the table?
So I just want to say real quick about that as well. So my concern is that when you talk about Camp Williams and that kind of stuff, that when people come in, they're going to want to do it all north, right? And so I'm from the north. We already have storage units there. And so I know there has to be some sort of condition where right? And so that's where I would come in is that would be where most people probably would want it because you are getting all the different areas in there, but there has to be some limit or there has to be a balance someplace.
And that's the kind of feedback we're looking
Right,
for.
yeah.
Is that what you guys want to see?
Is it a mile? Do you go by mileage? Do you go by population? Do you go by something like that?
Because that's been our discussions.
Right, does Lehigh or Bluffdale, do they have enough storage units?
That we don't
to-
need, right.
And storage units are a very
They're hot.
popular
They are.
thing to
People
build
use
because
them.
they're inexpensive, but they're in great demand. Every storage unit, you look at Layton City, there's almost a storage unit going up on every corner out in their agricultural areas. Hill Air Force Base is right there. They fill up almost immediately. So the demand is there. It's just
What
where do you
conditions we
want to
have.
see that balance?
Any other comments, please, Commissioner Wagstaff?
Yeah, so on this chart, if it's a PC with the C crossed out, it's just automatically going to permitted uses.
Yeah, but like we said, what uses there would you like us to look at further to say, do some of those still require some, certain conditions?
So where you see the C crossed out, we're saying it's not going to be permitted at all.
No, where C's crossed out, it's no longer conditional. It's permitted.
No,
Or it could be totally crossed, yeah, it could be totally crossed out, period, where
Yeah.
you can't do it anymore in that
If-
zone.
Yeah, if it's totally crossed out, you can't do it anymore. If the
But-
C's crossed out with a P next to it,
Yeah.
we're saying transition it to permitted.
Like there with tattoo shop, no longer in the industrial zone, period, just be wiped out.
Okay, so riding arenas used to be conditional in residential rural, now they'll be prohibited?
Yeah.
Okay. And then another thing we just, and I'm sure that the economics, you guys have looked at it, but as far as hotels, the idea of having them 300 feet away from a residential zone is great. I like that. I think we need to look at the actual properties because pretty much all of Redwood Road or Pony Express, a lot of places where they would want to have, even though it's on the other side of Redwood Road, is still within 300 feet of a residential zone. And so we're eliminating the better part of the city, except for maybe behind Costco and up Market Street. But for all of Redwood Road and Pony Express, we can't really have a hotel
Yeah.
there.
We've actually looked at that and we thought, well, you could do distance two ways. You could do it from property line, or you could do it from structure or pedestrian route. As far as the hotel goes, our train of thought is that actually be from the structure. And so we've looked at a lot of the properties on Redwood Road and say, okay, setbacks about here, building about here. Yeah, you're more than 300 feet from a residential zone.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and if your thought is, I want to look at this and you guys are saying 300, but I think it should only be 150. We're open to that kind of feedback, so.
No, I think with the setback, if where you're going to the building, then you're probably okay.
Yeah, we
'Cause
felt
the-
like that was
Yeah,
most
the problem
fair.
you could have one parcel that has 4 businesses, the hotel being, say, on the east side, but you got other businesses, so the lot itself could be technically a lot closer to a residential zone, but the actual hotel business is not.
Right.
So it's probably best to, in that case anyway, to do it from the structure itself.
Perfect. Thank you.
But I think that's a fair point. That's some of the stuff we talked about.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have just a general comment. So, I could see that the planning staff and the other staffs are not necessarily conflicted, but are looking for more feedback, and it's really hard to get from residents and such, especially something like the storage units. And I totally agree because my family, we spent 5 years in Japan. We were living here, and then we have a house here, and then we moved to Japan for 5 years, and then came back again. During that time, all our stuff had to be in a storage unit. Couldn't find any, at least, or the ones that were here were all used up. And so I could see that kind of thing happens. And for just also for people, like we moved from one house to another house in Saratoga Springs, that also required storage while they're building the house, And so I think that's definitely a good point. But my biggest concern, not because I don't know much about distance or how that would impact residences. For me, it's aesthetics. I know it's hard to codify aesthetics, but as long as something has a lot of trees around it, or some kind of landscaping, it usually, just looks good. And so I can't remember if it was Highlands Ranch, Colorado, but when we were driving through there, usually you don't want to put a storage unit right in the middle of a nice residential neighborhood. They did, but because it had nice landscaping, it was almost like a park practically, that it didn't, no one really mattered. In fact, or no one cared. At least according to my brother-in-law, no one really cared because it was such a nice area. It had some sidewalks and things like that, so nothing too intense, just a lot of landscaping. And because of that, people didn't mind because that area looked nice, and then you had some buildings. It wasn't so obvious that it was like storage units because just surrounding it was nice landscaping. So for me, as long as the aesthetics are nice, then it'd be great to put things like that, uses like that in the south part of the city or wherever, because I think it kind of enhances the aesthetic of the area, of the community.
So higher level landscape requirements, you're saying, for something?
Yeah,
like
I think some kind of landscape. I know we already have things like that, but maybe especially for something like that where it just basically hides the lighting and all that. And then if the structures are fairly decent, then I think most people would find that to be a nice asset because it's almost like an open space with with trees and things. And so
How do you, on the hotel that didn't make it, we understand why, and none of us wanted it, but if that was like a little Grand, a Grand America Hotel, totally different, same spot, totally different reception. How do you codify that to be, you can't, right?
That's the dilemma that we're in.
You can't just be arbitrary about
Right, kind of hard to say, well, you can go here because
We
you're a good
like you.
name, we don't know what you are, and no, we don't want you to, yeah.
And the irony of that hotel is, there were comments on Facebook, and I don't want to dive too far into this because that was way too much public clamor. But the irony of that hotel is people were making comparisons of, well, if it was a Marriott Fairfield Inn, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I
Well,
saw
actually, in industry standards, that hotel is on the same as a Marriott Fairfield Inn.
Right.
So just people aren't familiar with it, so that's why, and even the developer conceded that, you know, the logo is not necessarily the preference, and there could be modifications or style requirements
Architecture.
to give it a different, design and stuff. So, you know, some of that, we can't do that. We can't say, we want hotels, but only 5-star hotels, okay? You know, there's just no way for us to be able to legislate that. And so
Okay, that's
that's
my-
why we're trying to come up with this balance.
That answered my question.
I think the location is so much more important when it comes to a motel or something, or a hotel. But not, when that whole thing came up, the location was the worst thing I've ever seen. Literally, there's condos right here, there's school property right there, like it was awful. So I feel like more of a, I don't care if it's Grand America, I don't think it was a good spot type of thing.
Sure.
So,
And that, like I said, that
and I did
concedes
look
into
up
the
the
public
reviews
plan.
on that hotel, and they were actually really good. And so people were uninformed a little bit, I feel like.
Yeah.
And so, but the location, I felt like, so I think some sort of standards about how close it can be to, you know, a structure or something like that was good, preferable for that.
And, you know, not just the hotels, but other things like storage units and things like
Yes,
that. Those
yes,
were
same
some of the
thing.
things, similar concept of those same sort of considerations, so.
And I think we have that in our conditional use standards, our architectural,
There's architectural standards.
yeah, there's architectural standards. I mean, you can tighten those up, add, you know, earth tones or something like that on the sign, or, I mean, there's different things that you can add to the standards that we will use to
We took one
Gum days.
recently and it turned out pretty good, so the standards we have now are covered
pretty good,
well.
so.
Any other specific feedback for staff?
You guys are ready for dinner?
Have you, I mean, have we been helpful at all?
I guess let's ask planning, are there any other specific things that we felt like we needed a little more feedback on?
Yeah, well, I think we'll just, you know, take what feedback we did get from you tonight, and we'll, you know, plug that into what we've been working on here. Hopefully get it back to you in 2 weeks. Obviously, this has to go through a pretty intensive legal review as well, but we're going to push forward and hopefully get it on to you at the next meeting.
And screening for like storage sheds, that's already part of the code, correct?
Say that again?
Like
Screening for storage units?
Screening, like
can't
walls.
think of the top
If
of
it's,
my-
if it's an outside storage, it's just landscaping. So that might be another thing to look at, is having,
Standards.
you know, a fenced-in storage areas if it's outside facing or outside storage.
Most
Which they
storage
do.
units have masonry walls anyways. Is that the type of screening you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, the one by the car shop up north and then behind Walmart, they all have them.
Right,
But-
right. Yeah, I mean, that's something we can make sure is in the standards, I guess, yeah.
Something to consider. Everyone's on, so if you have a comment, please.
So when we looked at the packet tonight, I didn't realize that you had those kinds of questions about storage units, because I was just looking through the,
Well,
you know,
we
what was on there.
didn't. I also thought it was just looking at the table.
Yeah, so it might be a good idea to maybe have a work session where we can talk about stuff like that, because I was just going quickly through the, you know, through the table itself without realizing there's additional feedback
That was the
you know, that would be
intent.
useful, you know.
So any one that has a P and then a hyperscript number 4, we plan to propose those additional standards, but we haven't drafted them yet. So the discussion you heard about the storage units we had as staff, but nothing in the document discusses that. So our
well, if we
apologies
would've
on
just known
that.
that.
It's
Yeah.
something that we will come forward and propose standards for discussion.
But I would definitely love to think more about it, and, you know, so maybe a different work session for that, because with this, I was just going through the table, that was
What-
it, so.
I think even given us some good feedback to kind of take back and mull over and come up with.
So we'll bring it back, not necessarily in a work session. We're going to actually bring it back in 2 weeks, like Dave was saying, with actual standards spelled out in each of those things. And then from there, you can make your recommendations for, to the council for approval or amendments or modifications or whatever.
So you plan on having all those Ps with a 4 with standard language next to it and a motion attached to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Tweak a bit, or if you see something there that, hey, I don't think we need standards on that, you can give us a recommendation, but, we may pare it down a bit, just depends, we still got to tighten all this up.
Okay. I think it's a huge first step. I think staff did a great job.
That's great.
And economic development.
Cool.
Well, I mean, when we say staff, we just,
You mean
the people who come
you mean
regularly to our
their
meetings.
staff. It's
I
the
did a good
Planning
job
Commission,
staying
not
awake.
the Economic
Staff
Development
did,
Commission.
did a great job. Gordon, did you contribute at all?
I did a good job by staying awake.
Okay. Well done. Okay, that concludes the works.
Quick question
Oh,
as well,
please,
really quick,
please.
sorry. I just wanted to understand with background, it looks like we're eliminating completely educational center. What would be an educational center that we're eliminating?
Yes.
That's actually a commercial venture in a residential zone.
Okay.
You can still, somebody can still do homes, like a preschool type thing in a home.
Okay.
Whatever. We just don't want to actually have a full-blown commercial.
And that would be the same for like a childcare center then as well? Okay.
Right. But it's still available in the commercial zones,
Right,
just
okay.
not the residential.
Okay. All right, that concludes the work session. Thank you. We'll move on to number 9, approval of minutes, January 23rd, 2019. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Any deletions, additions, corrections? Okay. Have a motion?
I motion to approve the meeting, Planning Commission meeting minutes from January 23rd, 2019.
And any second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Anderson, second by Cunningham. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Reports of action?
On the screen here, if you just want to take a look at the comments, we did have a public with Pam and Neil and Fanger that did come up. And by the way, my recipe holder that I made Cub Scouts, my mother still uses. Made at her house, only American.
You know, that's impressive that you have that memory.
Can that be put in the minutes?
Oh, it's in the minutes. After everyone's reviewed that, if you have any corrections, please speak up.
Just the north side on the last comment.
On yours, Josh?
Yeah. The north side of 400.
Did you do all that?
North, not south.
There is one on the south, but I think the bike trail on the north side could use one.
Your machine.
So just put a bike trail on the north side?
Yeah. Which is a very nice bike trail, might I add.
A bike trail on north side of
400 south?
400 South, okay.
Should also be in the minutes that Ken just flies through all 214 pages and doesn't read each one individually.
He did say that on the table, he just flew through it, which is disappointing.
Any other comments on here? What we sent through?
Okay, we have to have a motion on this, don't we?
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion on item number 10? Reports of action. Anyone at all?
Do we need to make a motion on it? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the reports of action.
Perfect. We have a second? Second. Okay. Motion by Commissioner Barton, second by Commissioner Kilgore. Any discussion to that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commission comments. I have one. I have been finishing my basement, and so I've had to have a city inspector come out and inspect those things, and it has been a great experience. I thought the person from the city, I don't know his last name, but his first name is Cameron, was very professional and helpful, and I had to fix just a couple minor things, and he walked me through what to do, and experiences like that with city staff just make me really happy inside, that we live, and it happens, regularly, whether it's, something with a canal or just, it seems like the city just has great employees that work hard and want the residents to be successful and help them out. And anyway, it was just, if I had a different inspector, maybe, but my experience was great. And I think,
Well, our
Please,
building
thank you.
department does a enormous amount of inspections, and the turnaround time they get on plan reviews is probably the quickest in the state.
I could call today and have an inspector there tomorrow. I mean, they're great. So, anyway. And he didn't even know I was chair of this.
They still treated you well.
I didn't wear my city tag, no.
Made sure he knew.
Did you say I am the chair?
Oh, that brings a lot of cred. Okay, any other commission comments? Okay, director's report?
Just tell you that staff's worked, a lot of hours, especially Rachel, on this conditional use permit issue, and that she's put in a lot of time just to recognize, and everybody else has too, but Rachel's kind of been heading that up for us, just to give her that recognition.
Good work, Rachel. And staff.
Thank you.
Staff.
We reluctantly
Thanks for
had
staying
Dave come into the meetings too, so,
Well, thanks for putting up with Mr. Johnson. Okay, without objection, we adjourn.
You can sign it, Brian.